So we're embarking on a profound exploration of forgiveness in this series. It's going to be a multi-episode series, so we're going to take a deep dive into forgiveness, the intricacies of letting go, healing, finding inner peace. We're going to be getting some expert insights from our fantastic and wonderful guest, Nandarene, and we're going to be uncovering the transformative power of forgiveness in our lives, learning how we can navigate past hurts and how we can embrace empathy and reconciliation, especially at a time when cultivating compassion in a world which is hungry for forgiveness and understanding is so important. So I'm really excited to be diving into this episode with all of you guys today. And also, I want you to know that this is going to be an interactive session. So we'd absolutely love your input. This is not a two-way conversation. It's going to be myself, Nandarene, and all of you. So if you have any reflections, any comments, or any questions, then please use the chat box to share your views. And just to bring us all into the headspace, to bring us all together here this Thursday evening, I want to thank you all for giving up your valuable time, but also that we can share the energy of the space. I'd like us all to take a moment you can close your eyes or you can hone in on your breath, but just taking a moment to bring ourselves into the now, into the shared experience that we're all having together. And if your eyes are closed, I encourage you and welcome you to close your eyes. I'm just going to chant a very simple, short and sweet invocation. It's an ancient mantra. And before I begin to chant, as you tune into your breath, notice the pattern of your breath, whether it's deep, shallow, through your nostrils, through your mouth. Not consciously changing the breath, but allowing it to just be, and just becoming aware of where you are. I'd like you to try and turn your attention to someone who you look up to, someone who may have guided you recently, whether that's through a difficult time, guided you spiritually, or someone who you rely on for spiritual strength and support. Whether that's a person, a loved one, a deity, a teacher. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnana-Jana-Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnana-Jana-Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnana-Jana-Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him or her, that spiritual master, who's opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. So it's a mantra, and it's a reflection of gratitude to those who have come before us and those who have lit the path, the spiritual path of wisdom and knowledge, so that we can follow step by step in their footsteps. Now, thank you to everyone who's joined. I can see people who've just come into the room. I encourage you to switch on your cameras. It would be lovely to see you if possible. Now, I'm going to share a little bit about today's speaker. So, we're joined by Nandarene, and Nandarene is the founding head teacher for the Avanti School. She's a consultant head teacher, and she works with school leaders and participants in judicial hearings. And she's a trained counselor and therapist and undertakes well-being training based specifically on the Bhagavad-gita. Nandarene is a fellow at Oxford and undertook her research work on the Bhagavad-gita and how to make it accessible. So Nandarene, welcome to Wisdom Talk today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for
How are
having
you
me.
doing? How are you feeling?
I'm good, Saj. Thank you for having me. I'm really pleased to be here and just to, as you said, have an open-hearted conversation with everyone on the group, you know.
Is this your first Wisdom Talk? Is your first time with Think Gita?
It is in this context with Think Gita.
Amazing, amazing. And tell us all a little bit about your journey into the Bhagavad-gita, the effect that it's had on you and how it's influenced your spiritual journey up to now, because you've spent many years researching it from an academic perspective, and it seems like from the perspective of psychology as well.
Yeah, so, well, it started at a very young age because mother would wake up in the mornings and she would start her routine in the house, which was she would start cleaning and tidying up and putting things away. And as she'd be doing that, she would be chanting the Bhagavad-gita. And it was just something I was brought up. I just thought it was just mum singing, you know. And of course, when she was, giving her guidance, she would always refer to the Bhagavad-gita. Of course, when I got a little bit older and I started to think, oh, well, okay, what's the meaning of life? And to try and access, because mother she could read Sanskrit and Gujarati, and I couldn't. So there was nothing in English for me. We're talking about the 70s now. So I started looking in my local library in Birmingham, and I couldn't find anything because everything around Hinduism was under mythology. So that caused a bit of concern for me because it made me question what was it that mother was following. And of course, at that time, there was a huge thought going around in the Western world that, Hinduism was idolatrous and barbaric. And there were still some ideas of what we call Victorian muscular Christianity, that, Hindus, they have these weird and barbaric rituals. So I began to question actually my whole identity. But then going back a bit, at 9 years old, my auntie went searching for a guru in Vrindavan. That was about 51 years ago. And she happened to stumble upon the Radha Damodar temple. Anyway, she met a guru, and it happened to be one of Srila Prabhupada's early disciples. And so she came back to Birmingham, and there we would go every Saturday to her house, and we would be chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. She'd be reading a bit of Bhagavad-gita, particularly the verse Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, because we had to take an apple. And I didn't know why we had to take an apple, because then she would offer it on the altar, and she would say, well, look, everything comes from Krishna. So, you've got it, but it's always nice to offer it back because it's a sense of offering gratitude. So that's how it started, really. There was mother, there was my aunt, there was the confusion with, trying to seek more about my faith and my identity. And so there it went. And then, of course, taking on the study of the Bhagavad-gita in a practical spiritual life started to happen in the early 80s, perhaps 1985. And then I became a teacher, and my specialism was religious education. So I would be teaching children about different aspects of faith. So within Christianity, you would have the Good Samaritan. And every child, when they hear the truth, doesn't matter what faith it is, they know in their bones what it means to be a Good Samaritan. Where in Christianity, you know what it means to be a good, within Islam, you know what it means to be a good Muslim by giving zakat, to give away something that you have. And in Hinduism, there was this video of Krishna stealing the gopis' clothes, and they were half naked. And I sat there as a teacher thinking, this is my faith being portrayed to young children at 7 years old. What does it mean to be a Hindu in terms of Shastra? So, of course, I started to speak to some academics about this and about how Hinduism was being projected within the education system. And there is still an issue about that. And then I was invited to apply for a fellowship at Oxford, which then I did some work, and I did some academic but research work for education to make the Bhagavad-gita accessible. So that's been my journey. And of course, it's part of my daily life now to read. But the biggest challenge is not just to read something that's theoretical, philosophical, or academic. It's really, the Bhagavad-gita has a profound message, and it's about decoding that message so you can apply it in your daily life.
Yeah, and it's amazing how all of those experiences kind of cascaded into you taking it further into academia. The way you saw it was portrayed, the Bhagavad-gita and the teachings of the Bhagavad-gita being portrayed whilst you were teaching religious studies at school. And it goes all the way back to you experiencing the Bhagavad-gita through your mother's perspective and your mother's lens. And with regards to forgiveness, you see, you're also a trained counselor and therapist, right? And so how have the teachings of the Bhagavad-gita helped you with clients and also with the topic of forgiveness?
Well, so part of my work, well, my personal journey is, and when I've been reading the Bhagavad-gita and hearing the sages and the saints, the ancient sages and saints, one of the most fundamental things they say is that the material world is almost designed to wound you. And so we're here for a temporary reason, and we're here to learn lessons. And so on that premise, I was trying to work out, well, what are my lessons? Because I'm a good person. And I realized that being good isn't good enough, that there was something that was in the Bhagavad-gita that I mean, there were so many verses, but what was it that was going to empower me, but others? And one of the things I found is working with leaders and people with every level of society is that at every level, whether it's at work, leadership, whether it's in your profession, whether it's your colleagues, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, everybody carries some trauma and wound. And then Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gita, chapter 10, verse 4 and 5, that intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt, delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness, control of senses, control of the mind, happiness, etc., etc. These are eternal qualities. So I started thinking, well, okay, I need to get my act together because I need to feel more happy. And why is it that I'm not feeling happy? Because I'm deeply sensitive. You know, somebody had said something and I interpreted it in that way, or I didn't have the ability to draw boundaries in relationships. So I thought, let me look at forgiveness, because what is it about forgiveness that can really help not just myself, but others? And there is something very profound that within forgiveness, it is not a gift that I think I'm going to be, the great I is going to give to others because they've hurt me, and therefore I will give it to them, and therefore I will feel better. And actually, it's something more profound, it's more deeper, because what it forces you to do is to do an inner excavation of what's going on in me, that I'm interpreting things around me that are causing me to be wounded. So it's directly in the Bhagavad-gita, but it also, you know, when you think about in the 80s and the 90s, there was a huge revolution out there. Have the great personality, be charismatic, you know, charm people, be amazing, smile, you know, and you'll be influencing people. It's so shallow because you're not working on yourself. It's a shallow level of interaction, but deep down, you're not able to work within yourself. So I realized there's the surface thing that at the point of death, you're going to leave a lot of those things behind because they're not going to matter. They're kind of useless. It's like picking up a glass. The real diamond is in actually these qualities: forgiveness, kindness, compassion, love, empathy. And when I read the Bhagavad-gita, and it said the divine quality of forgiveness, it's an eternal quality. So the more you tap into forgiveness, the more you become happier as a person, and the more you begin to understand others. So I hope that answers your question.
I think it definitely does. And what I really drew from that is the depth of those eternal qualities that you mentioned, that are mentioned in the Bhagavad-gita, that we can all aspire to, in comparison to the depth of those qualities which seem glamorous and snazzy, that are fed to us. And it's almost kind of ties in with this day and age more. It's like toxic positivity, I guess, of having to be all smiley and be all happy and to charm people with, you know, what's happening here externally. And I definitely really resonated with the importance of excavation, an opportunity an opportunity or an experience which entails the potential of forgiveness is a potential for introspection and excavation. And I'd really like to pose that question to everyone who's joined us this evening, just so we can get an idea on the perspectives in the room. What does forgiveness mean to you? Or what is forgiveness to you? Or what do you think of when you think of forgiveness? Someone said how to win friends and influence people is a good example of those surface level tricks. Yeah, that was that was a best-selling book of the time. Whilst we're waiting for a few people to give their comments, what does forgiveness mean to you? What do you relate to forgiveness? Spiritually, is there a difference between a surface level or material level of forgiveness and a spiritual forgiveness at a spiritual level?
It is, because at a surface level, and I know I did it for a long, long time, because, you know, my mother-in-law, all my elders told me, it's okay, just suck it up, you know, just digest it, you know, don't, it's water off a duck's back, don't allow it to. But actually, if you feel hurt, you have pain. And so it affects the way you deal with people. So you may pretend to be happy, you may have to put on the charm to get things done, but deep down there's a dis-ease within yourself. And I was more interested in finding out what can give me, you know, real deep sense of peace. And that is what, you know, these qualities, these divine qualities, starting with forgiveness, is, because it begins to enable you to understand that all unhappiness that I feel, all sadness I feel, all disappointment I feel, all rejection I feel, comes from me. You know, having the knowledge at least enables you to, you may still have the feeling, but it will enable you to work yourself through it, rather than and this is where I found that when I was working with leaders, when challenges came in their organizations, if they weren't resilient and robust within themselves, they became part of a toxic culture. And so, you know, you use the word toxic, actually, and it's exactly what I noticed, that those high-level leaders who were doing so well, and their organizations were thriving and their staff were thriving, were at deep peace with themselves, and they didn't take things so personally. They sought mediation, they sought to understand, they sought to sort things out, they sought not to take things personally, they sought not to create divisions in an organization. These are all the things that happen if you don't have forgiveness.
That really resonates, especially when you mentioned that at kind of in a workplace environment or at a leadership level. But one thing you mentioned earlier was how boundaries in your life can help to create that environment and protect yourself from that toxicity, from too much proximity.
Yeah.
Uh,
And those boundaries come, Saj, when we begin to understand my true nature. Now, I was
right.
brought up thinking I'm an Asian, I'm a woman. When I came in the 70s, it was like, it's problematic, because our parents were economic migrants, or they were migrants because they were seeking refuge or asylum or whatever. So
Yeah.
then there was this whole thing of judgment going around. So I suppose these are things about your own self-esteem, because if you're projected as a different color or a gender or a race, and you're seen as less than others, then you're open to being more vulnerable to seeing yourself as less. So it's tied up with your own self-esteem. It's
Yes.
tied up with your own mental resilience. It's tied up with your childhood and your traumas. It's tied up with how you see yourself. Now, what happens is when you tap into the Bhagavad-gita, the Bhagavad-gita tells you the soul transcends race, class, gender, all those material designations, because the nature of the soul is Satchidananda. It's eternal. It's lovely.
Beautiful.
So then you begin to understand, actually, there is something beautiful about me. There is something good about me. There is something worthy about me. And if it's within me, then it's in others. So, the Bhagavad Gita helps us to actually understand that we have to let go of those designations. And sometimes we have to even let go of the desire to be important, whether it's in a position or we're desiring to be something. Those are, as somebody said, how to win friends and influence people. There's something credible about that when you can do it deeply from within your own self, with your own integrity. But if you don't do it from integrity, then it's kind of a lost cause.
Yeah, integrity and intention behind every action is key. And we've had some really beautiful reflections here in the chat. One that particularly resonates and ties in with what you were talking about, self-esteem, and something I've been reflecting on myself. Robert Collins has said, forgiveness means letting myself off the hook. And as Anita said, forgiveness means to accept the situation and be kind to yourself. Often forgiveness isn't just something external which is related to an interaction that we have with someone or how we might feel hard done by, but we could be our own worst enemies or our own tormentors in that case, and forgiveness is key to that.
Absolutely. And you asked the question to the audience, what does forgiveness mean to you? And it will mean many different things to many people. And one of them will be the ability to forgive myself. So there are two angles of forgiveness: forgiving those who've hurt us or who've trespassed against us or who've traumatized us, and then often it's from the most significant relationships that we have.
Yes, the closest, the most intimate.
Closest significant relationship. And then it's forgiving ourselves for the times that maybe we weren't so emotionally resilient in ourselves, or we didn't have the skills and strategies to deal with things. And when I think about myself as a leader or a parent, I think I got loads of things to be thinking about, but there are also strategies in place that you don't put yourself in eternal hell, that you have a healthy regret and you learn to move on. But it comes with the desire to say, you know what, I want to let go of some of the pain that I'm holding. I want to, they say, oh, I can forgive, but I can never forget, I don't know what that really means, to be honest with you. It means that it still means we're holding on to it. And one of the things we wanted to do, the Bhagavad-gita says, is that, we want to go light. We don't want to carry the baggage. Because when we carry the baggage, we're going to keep meeting those people lifetime after lifetime, And there's a lot of work done on reincarnation and past life regression, where, unresolved relationships, the person, that people come back again in a different relationship, but it's still the same lesson.
Yeah, yeah. With regards to, is it almost like a spiritual or a conscious, self-conscious or a subconscious muscle that we have to flex and train to learn to have a better language with ourselves and learn to be able to cultivate that self-forgiveness or once in relation to our self-esteem?
Yeah, it's a great question. You've asked a really great question. That we realize that muscle is weak when we are the cost to our physical health, the cost
Right.
to our mental health, the cost to our well-being. So when I did some research, it took me about a year to write this course, and I did some research on forgiveness. And it said that the cost is to your spiritual life, your psychological well-being. Unforgiveness weakens your immune system. It hurts your heart. 61% of cancer patients have forgiveness issues. More than half are severe. Chronic pain. So the body never lies. The body keeps the score. So
Body keeps a score.
yeah, the body, you feel an emotion and you digest it, but it's got to come out somewhere. And if you haven't got an ability to be able to let it out in a healthy way, then it's going to manifest. So with me, I experienced something where I just thought I had a zit in my nose, and I'd gone to a meeting somewhere in Kent, met with my colleagues, and they said, "Are you all right?" By the time I got home, one side of my face had fallen. It was almost like I was having a stroke. I'd gone to the doctors, and I was getting these boils because I was so angry about something and someone. I was so angry, and here I am. I've been on a spiritual journey. I profess that I have a spiritual life, but emotionally, I was still hanging on to the hurt, and it was a hurt of somebody who left the world so suddenly. And I was boiling over inside, and then I was going to consultant after consultant, and one boil would come up, and then another one it would be so painful. At one point, I thought my head was going to explode. And I remember just going down on my knees and crying because, none of the consultants could help me. None of the doctors could help me. No medication could help me. And I knew what it was because I was hanging on to this anger, this deep, deep anger. And outside, I was a nice person, but inside, I was boiling over. And I remember just kneeling down and praying, "Please, Krishna, help me to let go of this anger." And as soon as, I think you have to go to like the edge of the cliff and willing to be fall. And then all of a sudden, when I started to let go of the pain, those awful boils that went on for a year. Boils are disgusting. They look disgusting. Everything about it was horrible, but I could, having gone through having had a tumor, and I knew that tumor was because it was lack of forgiveness. So, I'm sharing this with you because not because I think other people should know, because I think I'm sharing it for my own journey, that when death was on the door, I realized I was a lovely person outside, but inside I was holding on to so much pain. I had to let go of all the wounds.
Yeah. A lot of people resonating with what you say in the chat. Gabor Mate's talked a lot about trauma and effects on the body, as has Louise Hay, someone saying your body shows all your emotions, conscious and subconscious. We have a question with regards to that letting go and also the level of engagement. So Anne's asking here, I'm interested in hearing about how to navigate forgiveness of people who consistently wrong you. And can you forgive but not engage? Is that a thing? And what
ask me Anne's question again, please.
I'm interested in hearing about how to navigate forgiveness of people who consistently wrong you.
Okay.
Can you forgive? Can you forgive but not engage?
Well, look, if people are consistently, misbehaving, then, as you said, Sarge, earlier on, it's about having good boundaries. Okay. That's about going internal within ourselves and saying, okay, I need to draw some boundaries. Because if people are consistently overstepping the mark, that's also our responsibility to be able to say, hang on, we need to have a conversation, or we have to find the language that that person understands to be able to draw those boundaries. It's complex if you're living with people. It's difficult if they're not going to listen to you. I have an adult son who was very angry with me because I think I just didn't, listen to him very well. And so then, it doesn't go away, but I think we have to find within ourselves what's going to work. And that's where the inner excavation goes. And because we have to look within ourselves and say, okay, which part of me, what is going on in here within me first? Is there something that I'm projecting? Is there something I have to change within myself? And then, because the victim mentality, and I'm not saying Anne is a victim, but it's just come in my mind that the victim mentality is very disempowering. So we have to find ways of empowering ourselves, and only you will know that, because only you will know the person, and only you will know the situation. But where there's a will, you'll find a way. That's what I'm going to say. Have the will, have the intention to resolve it, you will find the resolution.
That has as much to do with your capacity to forgive, along with the level of engagement of the person you're forgiving or interacting with.
Yeah, and the inner excavation was, what was my part in that situation?
So someone's left a comment here in the chat that S has said, when has someone got their microphone on? That's can you hear that noise? Is it just me? Don't worry, there seems to be some interference on the microphone, but it's okay. I'm just going to read this comment. So there is noise, yeah. So whoever's our tech person, Krishna Khanna, could you just try and find whose microphone might be making that noise? So this comment says, when you start the process of forgiveness inside towards a person who wrongs you, and do whatever practice you need to, often that relationship changes somewhat on an energetic level without you having to physically do anything. Either that person is naturally kept away as they have finished serving their purpose on that level, or the relationship changes and evolves. Whilst you're doing that work, you may have to create your boundaries and stay away for your own mental and emotional health. So thank you for that reflection. I think I read a book somewhere. Someone told me a story once of they went to an ashram, or they spoke to this monk or a guru about a problem they were having with a person and a big situation that they'd had. And that guru had then told him to sit in his meditation and welcome that person into their meditation every day, and give good wishes, or give good thoughts towards that person. And the reaction was obviously visceral. How could I do such a thing? That's like my worst nightmare. That's even could be inducing some kind of like trauma from the experience. But they found that they attempted the practice, and through that practice, they were able to transmute all that pent-up energy, the anger that was there, into something else. It was able to evolve into something else, and then eventually dissipate to the extent where that person that person and that experience no longer bothered them.
Yeah, it's a highly evolved state of consciousness to be able to be a well-wisher for somebody who's hurt you. And
Yes.
and Deepa's made a comment, and she said, even if you forgive someone, you might still feel hurt and bitter, and it could take a long time to come out of that, no matter how hard you try with forgiving. Absolutely right, Deepa. It can take years. It can take years. But if you're on the journey and you're willing, as you evolve, you will be able to let go of that. I think, I'm talking about my own self, there was one particular issue, I think it went on for over nearly 10 years. And I
Wow.
thought, I'm such a nice person. I know all about forgiving. I know about the Bhagavad-gita. I've got spiritual practices, but it could be something just so karmic. It's so entrenched in you that it's not going to be that easy to let go of. And that's why prayer is so important, because it comes back to the thing that I will give forgiveness. Well, actually, you can't give forgiveness unless you have deep compassion for the other person, deep compassion for yourself, and submit to a higher authority. For me, it was Krishna. Please, Krishna, I can't do this on my own. I'm feeling very powerless. I don't really like the way I'm thinking and feeling. I was judging myself that, I should be able to forgive this person, but I just can't. And I can't seem to let go. Even though I forgive, it comes back in a circle, again and again and again. It's like a spiral. But that's often an indication for our own development, because consciousness, the Bhagavad-gita talks about, the 3 levels of consciousness, the gunas, sattva gun, rajagun, and tamagun. Tamagun is the low levels of consciousness where we're feeling guilt and anger, resentment and hatred, sadness, grief, pain. That keeps us, that's the level of stuck. And that's why we will find it hard to sometimes forgive. I'm talking about myself. But the more we work on ourselves, the more naturally you're like somebody said, I think, Saju, that when your consciousness, it's like this, there's something within me that's hitting that pain, but as soon as my consciousness rises, it just can't touch me. It falls away, or there's something within us that we must work on. And like you said, when the sage said, I allow that person in, I try and put myself in their shoes. What was going on for them? Why were they behaving? What was their background like? What happened to them? For me, there were issues about my mother, and I just couldn't, years were going by, decades were going by, and I still couldn't forgive my mother. And yet she was the most significant person in my life, who gave me so much instruction and everything. But there was just one thing that I couldn't forgive her on. And I realized that when I put my prayer in, and what was it about, this situation? And I realized at that point, from an adult perspective, what the trauma that she was going through, I at that point realized that her pain was actually greater than the pain I was carrying of unforgiveness. And I think that's why they are companions. Compassion and forgiveness have to come together, because if they don't, there's nothing to hook onto. You're not really able to forgive that person. And it comes with forgiveness for yourself as well. But it's a journey. It's not something you can do overnight. It's not a magic pill. You've got to keep going on and, keep laboring.
Yeah, that's really key. I think thank you for sharing that. Compassion and forgiveness have to go hand in hand. Mina Halai said here, sometimes we're quick to judge, and everyone has their own past story that shapes their behavior. If we can learn not to take it personally and instead sympathize with that person and try to understand it as a reflection of their past experiences, that can be helpful. Yeah, hard not to take it personally, but in sympathizing with that person, I think thank you for sharing that experience with your mother, Nandarene, because I think it resonates a lot with me, and it resonates a lot with a lot of people, I'm sure, on the call, that it's the people that we are most intimate and closest with in our life that we can find it sometimes about the hardest to forgive, and to have that level of compassion. But it takes a certain zooming out, or there has to be a shift in perspective, in at a deep level, subconsciously, and at the level of the soul. Because you can zoom out intellectually at the situation and say, oh, maybe this is, but if you don't feel it, at a deeper level, then there can't be room for that change. And I guess that feeling at a deeper level comes from that compassion that you cultivate or draw from.
It comes from compassion. It comes from spiritual practices, where
Yeah.
we begin to understand that what makes me is not just my body. When I'm identifying with my body, I am just seeing the world in a very limited fashion. What I see is what I believe. What I experience is what I believe. But when I go beyond my body and I realize that I'm also a spirit soul, and I can detach from the mind and the stories the mind is telling me, because the soul is always untouched. The soul is Satchidananda Vigraha. The soul is the observer. It is observing, it is the mind, the intelligence, the false ego, those different aspects of our construct who we think is me. It's the more we develop our spiritual practice, the more we can become the person who can observe the mind and become the observer of what's going on. Like Shakespeare, he said, you may know, because what does he say? All the players and the drama.
Don't test me on my Shakespeare. But all the world's a stage and that kind of thing, isn't it?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have to see that as well. And
thank you, Sujata.
Sujata?
Yeah, all the world's a stage and
Sujata's a
we merely
teacher.
players.
If I think I know the Sujata, she's a teacher. So there's always a teacher in hand to give us that little help there.
I had to phone a friend there with Sujata. I had the first part, all the world's a stage. So thank you. What was I going to say just before that? Yeah, we're so complex and multifaceted, and there's different levels to us. And someone said previously, I think it was Kaylee a few weeks ago on a Wisdom Talk, said we're all like walking icebergs, humans, because there's so much more than what meets the eye. And I think that's what the Bhagavad-gita, the essence of the Bhagavad-gita, is really trying to get us to cultivate. It's bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of love and selfless service. And that's something which is just through repetition that we have to cultivate, through the association, through having conversations like this and associating with people like yourselves, or just trying to try and read and get an understanding, and feel that wisdom at a deeper level, not just intellectually.
Yeah, I love what Sujata said. And she said, we've made soul contracts, and then there are ancestral burdens that we bring. And I definitely realized that about me, because there were some things that I was carrying, and I knew that was probably the experience of, coming to Britain in the 70s, and Enoch Powell talking about the rivers of blood, and
Rivers of blood.
Walking down the road and seeing signs where they said no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. And I used to think, why is that sign up outside that house or in that window? And I didn't understand as a 6-year-old. But what I do realize is that had a legacy of Britain, and it had the empire, and it had, and forget that. We're not just talking about, imperialistic history, but we're talking about, the karmic burdens that we carry as women, thinking about Gujarat, and we're thinking about the famine, and we're thinking about the role of Brahmins and all of that. So this is why we've got to wake up to that the material world. The Bhagavad-gita teaches us about inequalities, and through inequalities, we're going to experience pain, we're going to experience wounds, we're going to experience suffering. But when we start connecting at soul level more and more and more, those issues will fall away because we will stop sweating about those issues. We, as soon as we recognize something, it allows us to let it go.
So do you think this is quite a deep question to be asking as we get towards the end of the talk? But do you think ancestral trauma has a part to play then with the level, with that self-esteem inequality that we feel, and also challenges that our parents may have had to face coming as economic migrants to the UK, those kinds of things?
Yeah, of course. My daughter-in-law said something about, she's, a highly educated professional woman, and she had this realization that, certainly her father and myself were a similar age. You're told, this is not just about economic migrants. Everyone in this room, no matter where they're from, will understand. You are inculcated at school. Be good. Do what you're told. Don't create trouble.
Yeah.
Work hard. And so you put so much energy in that you don't put energy in socializing and engaging. And, these are the power skills, So that is something that we've got to be able to do. And we can do it deeply and sincerely when we come to at a soul level. So yes, there is ancestral trauma, but that trauma, it persists because at some point, everyone on this group, if you've got an ancestral thing going on, you now have the knowledge of the Bhagavad-gita, and you can intercept that, and you can stop that cycle of deprivation or ancestral trauma.
Yeah.
We've got in the Bhagavatam, the devotees often sing this song, the Nrsimha song, because, Hiranyakashipu was a terrible demon, and he tried to kill his son Prahlad. When the Lord manifests to protect him, and said to Prahlad, "What do you want?" Prahlad said, "Please just save my dad. I know he was a terrible man, but can you save him?" And so what did Lord Nrsimhadev say? 12 generations up, 12 generations down, they will all be liberated. So you help to stop that ancestral cycle by focusing on your spiritual journey. By you doing that, you will remove those shackles, these ancestral shackles.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Doing the work on yourself and taking responsibility for what's yours and not just others.
Yeah, do the world a favor, work on yourself, and others will benefit. Sorry,
Amazing.
I'm saying that to myself because that's what
I know it resonates with me. Like it resonates with me very to my soul. And I think with so many people in here, there's someone who's just left a really wonderful comment. So Deepa said that they're all really wonderful comments. Keep them coming. Someone said, "Thank you. This is also relevant to me right now. It feels like Krishna put this talk before me for a reason. Can you suggest some things we can do to try and build that resilience and develop our consciousness?" You said prayer was one, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, the first one, and I think Deepa will know this because I think I'm speculating, but unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So do yourself a favor and stop poisoning yourself, right? That's the first thing. Make an intention that this is harming me, and I want to put, instead of poison, I want to put some good stuff in. Now, the way you can really forgive is start with I'm just looking for a note to see if I can find something. But anyway, I don't think I need the note. I need to just share it with you. It starts with the intention, right? The intention is, I want to forgive. It might not be an overnight thing. It might not be, you might not achieve it in a year, but you will know that it will. So start with the intention, then start with the willingness. The big part of forgiveness is willingness. The other thing is you start appreciating that person, because whoever that person is that you're holding on to the unforgiveness, just allow yourself to see some of the good things about them. And that's really, really important, because what happens is when somebody hurts us, our vision of them becomes so narrow we just see them as a perpetrator. And we want to open up that vision, like you said, the sage, start appreciating them, start looking after yourself. So another part of resilience for developing forgiveness is take care of yourself. If your body's holding on to stuff, go and have a massage, go and walk, exert yourself, do things that make you happy, notice where you're stuck, because negativity attracts negativity. So work on yourself, to find joy, and you will find the strategies. And actually, when you pray deeply that I'm so powerless, I can't seem to let go of this emotion, please help me, we are asking for divine intervention to be able to help us. And the more we work on our consciousness and we get to a stage of neutrality and we're able to see above what's going on in the drama, then we can really allow ourselves to get detached and say, okay, what was the lesson in this? The real powerful thing is to ask yourself, what's the lesson in this? My lessons were not drawing boundaries, wanting to be a good girl, even in my adult life, wanting to be liked, maybe sending off mixed messages, because if you're not confident, if you're not holding your space, then you're open to so think about your own part of how you can empower yourself.
Yeah, that's a big one I resonate with for me, because I'm always been a big pleaser, people pleaser, and having to work with boundary setting. Someone's asked if we can get a recording of this. This is recorded, so we'll try and share a link. I think if you can get in touch with us through our Instagram page, we may be able to share a recording of this. Has anyone got any more questions as we get into the last 5 minutes as we wrap up? I want to thank you, Nandarene, because I think we've explored some really beautiful ways of how we can understand forgiveness this evening from a spiritual perspective, the perspective of your life experiences as well. And thank you for being so candid and sharing your journey, because here we go. The recordings are uploaded to our YouTube channel in the Wisdom Talks playlist. Thank you, Krishna Ganda. Someone said, how can you forgive someone who's actually doing bad for you now? So I guess forgiveness in the moment. That's a tough one.
You have to pray for the lesson. What's my lesson in this situation?
Yeah.
And ask for help, ask for divine intervention and help to, because in these things we're never helpless. This is where inner excavation is really important. What's my part in this? Because sometimes it's just about letting go, because the Vedas say that when somebody is offensive all the time, we have to also, there's a strategy, we step back, but only you will know, because you will know the situation you're in. And you will find the path. You just have to put the prayer out there and the desire to resolve it. But don't be a victim.
Don't be a victim.
Victim you become self-absorbed in yourself instead of being empowered.
Yeah. Well, speaking of empowerment, someone's at that very second, Radhika Gupta said, thanks for this lovely conversation. It's very empowering. So you have empowered us tonight. And someone else, Sushma, said, it's such an uplifting and profound talk with so many learning points. I have to agree, so many beautiful learning points in there. I think what really stood out for me is when you said that compassion and forgiveness have to go hand in hand. That really made me think. And the other thing about unforgiveness is like taking a poison and wanting the other person to die, or to not, to feel something as a result. Thank you from my core. Thank you from the core of my heart. Sorry, your wisdom is really helpful. So some really lovely comments. I think everyone would agree with me that we'd love to have you back. I think we could do a second round or a third round even on exploring forgiveness. because I didn't get to ask you this time, but maybe just before we wrap up, is there a particular verse that we could go away and maybe read or meditate on, or some people might be able to go away and take some time out to read that verse from the Bhagavad Gita that resonates with you, maybe not, in this particular moment, or to do with forgiveness or the conversation we've had this evening?
Well, I think Shushma might know, because we've covered through the Think Gita some of the chapters, but chapter 10 is a really great chapter, verse 4 and 5, because there Krishna talks about the divine qualities. And then I think there's chapter 16, divine and demoniac qualities. Then there's chapter 12, that covers some great qualities. I would say just whiz through those chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. But if you, in terms of your question, the one verse, it's chapter 10, verse 4 to 5. Focus on that, And
From me alone, I've got the verse up here. From me alone arise the varieties of qualities in humans, such as intellect, knowledge, clarity of thought, forgiveness, truthfulness, control over the senses and mind, joy and sorrow, birth and death, fear and courage, non-violence, equanimity, contentment, austerity, charity, fame, and infamy.
So if Krishna is saying those qualities come from me, right? I'm going to beg him for that quality, aren't I? I'm going to say, Krishna, I beg you, please help me to have compassion. Please help me to forgive this person, because I can't seem to do it on my own. I'm finding it extremely difficult. This is what, when I was saying about prayer, I think I got to the point of prayer because I thought the great I was going to give forgiveness to others. And it just wasn't working,
That shift in perspective from the great I, and it takes so much pressure off yourself too, because we see ourselves as the masters and creators of our world and our universe, and everything hinges on our action, our intention, and our desire, and we try and make the world malleable to our every desire and wish. And when things don't go away, we're really hurt by that experience. And often relinquishing that control to a higher power, to the universe, to Krishna, whoever it may be for you, is liberating. And to hear those qualities in particular being described in the Bhagavad Gita very specifically, it kind of gives us a blueprint that we can attain to, qualities that we can meditate on, that we can try and imbibe in our day-to-day life.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap up now. I have to thank you, Nandarene, because it was such a lovely conversation. It's so nice. I always feel like it's such a blessing for me to be able to conduct these wisdom talks, and I'm always just astounded by how open-hearted the speakers who come on are. And I want to thank you for sharing your journey with us, and sharing your experiences and your insights, because they've touched me, and they've touched clearly many people here in this evening from the comments. So
thank you, Saj. And I suppose my closing message to everyone today, this evening, is, I have this deep belief that and wish that everyone should experience happiness and joy. That is the nature, that's our nature in the spiritual world. We're having loving exchanges, we're teasing each other. We worship a God who sings and dances, who's tricky and cheeky, and we want to have those loving exchanges, and everyone in this room deserves that. And I pray that you really go on this journey of forgiveness and do this inner excavation, because you deserve the joy in your life. You want to let go of this, whatever pain that you're holding, and welcome more happiness, welcome more joy, and let go of the past traumas that may affect our future relationships. So that's my prayer for all of you, with lots of love.
oh, I can feel it. I can feel it coming through the screen. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I'm gonna make sure we're welcoming you back for another wisdom talk, because I would love to continue this conversation. We're we're back again next week, next Thursday, for another wisdom talk. But we're also, I think we had an in-person wisdom talk meeting at Studio 108 recently, which was really successful, and we loved seeing you there. So thank you for everyone who joined for that. We have a retreat, which is quite an early announcement, but we've got a retreat coming up in India with Radhanath Swami at the Eco Village and Mayapur, it's an early bird offer. It's from the 23rd of January to the 6th of Feb in 2025, which scarily is not too far away, but it's an early bird offer. The price is 1950, and that includes flights, accommodation, internal flights, transfers, all your meals, and a spiritual adventure across some sacred spots in India, Mayapur, the Eco Village, traveling with some wonderful spiritual leaders and spiritual teachers. So if you're interested in that, please have a look at the Think Gita website. I'm going to just copy the link that in the chat. If you're interested in that, you can sign up. Otherwise, we'll see you next Thursday. And thank you, as always, for joining. Really appreciate all of your inputs, and have a wonderful Thursday evening.
Thank you.
See you.